Hi, everyone. This is John Daly. I'm here again with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How's it going today, Bernie?
Oh, well,
Good. So today we'll be talking about a topic that was actually suggested by a Bernard Goldberg premium member. There have been some recent news stories in which the victims, or in some cases would-be victims, of some serious crimes were notably, these victims were notably on the political right side of the ideological divide, and those stories have in turn received disproportionately little attention from the mainstream media. One was, of course, the assassination attempt on Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh by an individual who was reportedly upset about the information that was leaked in the Alito draft, which suggested that Roe versus Wade may be overturned this summer. Another story is the series of threats and attacks against pro-life pregnancy centers and faith-based organizations that arose from that same leaked draft. What are your thoughts on the media's handling of these stories, Bernie?
well, that's all true for openers. And there are a couple of reasons for the bias. One is that, especially on cable, the channel is pandering to the audience. They're giving the audience what it wants to hear. So on CNN, for instance, it's practically the January 6th insurrection channel. Because they know that that's what their audience wants to hear. They know that their audience is made up largely of liberal Democrats. So are they doing this directly to help the Democratic Party? Not directly, but indirectly they are, because if they play down certain stories that make the left look bad, that helps the Democratic Party. And the same is true on the other side of the coin, on conservative media. On Fox, you tune in the morning and you don't get anything on January 6th. You don't, that's not an important story as far as Fox is concerned. But you do get how bad inflation is, legitimate story. You do get the mess on the southern border, another legitimate story. And you do get stories about crime in America. Now, are they consciously trying to hurt Joe Biden? You can make that case, but more likely, they know that their audience is made up of conservatives, and they know that conservatives don't want to hear about January 6th, but do want to hear about anything that hurts Joe Biden. So indirectly, they're helping the Republican Party. That's how it works. They give the audience what it wants on both sides, and they help the Democrats on CNN, they help the Republicans on Fox, and add to that one more factor. The producers at CNN and the producers and the reporters at CNN, the on-air people, they're largely liberal Democrats. And on Fox, it's the other side of the coin again. They're largely Republican conservatives. So a combination of giving the audience what it wants and giving the audience what the journalists themselves want and believe is the case. So that's how we get this lopsided coverage of certain subjects and the downplaying of other subjects.
Yeah, and these were, these are, pretty big stories when you look at it. For example, the pro-choice. I had never heard of this group, but Jane's Revenge is a pro-choice group. They've taken credit for some of these acts of arson, and they're pretty significant. There's been a number of them, and the FBI is looking into this too. But again, that's not one you're gonna hear much about on a lot of channels. But the one that really gets me is the Kavanaugh one, because can you imagine, if Ruth Bader Ginsburg were still alive and this had happened to her, there was this was a serious deal. This guy had a last minute change of heart, but he showed up in a cab, Kavanaugh's home. Saw some law enforcement officials out front, which sort of deterred him and got him to give this one last thought. But he had a gun, he had other weapons. It would have been just a days and days long story, I think, if it was a liberal justice.
The New York Times, which sets the agenda for television news, what the New York Times does affects what everybody else does, basically, at least everybody else in liberal media does. The New York Times put the Kavanaugh story on page 20. if it were Justice Sotomayor or Kagan or Breyer, who some right-wing screwball flew across the country with plans to assassinate, it wouldn't have been on page 20. It would have been on page 1. Now, if you need any evidence, any proof, anything to show that there's a bias in the news, that is it.
Right, right. I mean, yeah, you can't ask for a better example for sure. So what, just a little to the side part of that story, I've heard from a lot of people on the right that, and I think it was trying to sort of link this to the January 6th sentiment as far as incitement goes, but they had pointed to some words Chuck Schumer had said in front of the Supreme Court. That, I have the quote here. This is when he was talking out front. Say, I want to tell you, Gorsuch. I want to tell you, Kavanaugh. You have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. What I didn't realize when people were making this argument, that was actually from over 2 years ago that happened. So I think doing a direct incitement with what happens. But Schumer did come out later that day and acknowledge that what he said was wrong, that it was the wrong thing. But what do you think of the inclination to tie a direct link between what Democrats have said and what happened?
I mean, we're all human, and so I understand my conservative friends who say, "Wait a second, you're making a big deal out of this, but you're down January 6th, but
Right.
you're downplaying what Schumer said." Now, the two are different. What Schumer said is wrong, dead wrong, and his apology came because he knew how wrong it was, and even his own team knew what he said was unacceptable. But January 6th was an attempt to overthrow the government. Now, I don't believe that those, chuckleheads had the wherewithal, the intelligence, the power to actually overthrow the government, but that's what they were there to do, many of them.
Right.
So my conservative friends have a point. If you're going to downplay what Schumer said, then don't badger me with January 6th. It's an unfortunate point, but I understand it. That's human nature. We all do that to some extent or another about different things. And the left, the liberal media has downplayed the Kavanaugh thing, the Schumer thing, a number of other stories. So conservatives understandably are saying, don't lecture me about January 6th when you don't want to talk about that other stuff.
Right. And I do think
we should be talking about both.
Right. Right. And I do think there is some more recent criticism around that, where after this leaked, the Alito draft leaked, and there were people that were starting to show up outside, protesters outside of these Supreme Court justices' homes. It took a while for the Democrats to really push back against that and say this was wrong. Even Joe Biden took a few days before he came out and said this was the wrong thing to do. And I think that's definitely legitimate criticism as well.
Yeah, if you say that Joe Biden condemned it, I'll take your word for it. But
it took a few days.
I must have blinked when he said it.
Well, I think it was through his press secretary. I don't know if he might.
Yes, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's another point that conservatives understandably make. You want us to condemn January 6th, but you don't want to condemn, Mr. President. You don't want to condemn an attempt on a Supreme Court justice's life. You leave that to your press secretary because the brain trust in the White House said, Mr. President, we have to say something about this. I mean, everybody thinks this is wrong, so we have to say something. So they send out their new press secretary to say something. No, President Biden needed to say something immediately. And he still needs to say it is wrong to protest outside the homes of judges, and in this case, justices of the United States Supreme Court. He won't do it because he doesn't want to offend the progressive wing of his party. that, in my view, is pulling the strings.
So another topic you wanted to discuss is how media organizations have been covering the January 6th hearings. You've been switching back and forth from different news networks during and after these hearings, and you've noticed some things that you wanted to talk about. You also wanted to mention something about Trump himself in some thoughts.
I want to mention something about me, myself.
Yes.
After a few things I've said and written about Donald Trump, there was massive blowback, which is fine with me. I want to make something clear to my friends out there who are Trump supporters. This is very important. I understand why you voted for him in 2016. You believed he was better than Hillary Clinton. No problem. I understand why you voted for him 4 years later, because you thought he was better than Joe Biden. Again, no problem. I understand why some of you are fed up that you've had enough of liberal elites looking at you as if you're a bunch of hayseed jerks who live in middle America and who think you're part of a basket of deplorables. And you've said, screw me? No, screw you. And you voted for Trump. I understand that. I get that. To some extent, it even makes sense to me. Here's why I've written and spoken negatively about Donald Trump. Because he's hurt the Republican Party. If you don't like Joe Biden, blame Donald Trump. Do you really think millions and millions of people voted for Joe Biden because they thought he was a statesman, because they thought he was smart, because they thought he had great ideas? No. You know that isn't why they voted for Joe Biden. They voted for Joe Biden because they wanted to get rid of Donald Trump. They've had enough of the 4 years of chaos, okay? You don't like the fact that the House is run by Democrats and Nancy Pelosi? Blame Donald Trump. He lost the House in 2018 because people were fed up with Donald Trump. The Senate, you don't like the fact that the Senate is run by Democrats? Blame Donald Trump. He went to Georgia after he lost the election, said the election was rigged, convinced enough Georgia voters that they didn't vote, and 2 progressive Democrats won the election. So if you don't like Democrat liberal policies and Joe Biden, blame Donald Trump. That's one reason I don't like Donald Trump. Here's another. He tried to overturn an election. He lied to you about it being stolen, okay? Now, he may believe it's stolen, so the word lie may not be the right word, but if he's not lying, then he's delusional, okay? It's only one or the other. He tried to subvert the peaceful transfer of power, which would have been the first time in the history of the United States since the 1700s, the late 1700s. We've had a peaceful transfer of power, and he tried to do away with that. Now, if you're willing to accept that, as one of you wrote to me and said, I'm going to do what's best for my family, no matter what you think. Of course, do what's best for your family. But let's not pretend that you're not overlooking these things that Donald Trump did, that he helped the Democratic Party, he helped elect Joe Biden, and he tried to subvert the peaceful transfer of power. If you don't think that's a big deal, then that's on you. You can come after me all you want. You're entitled to. I even welcome opinions that I don't agree with, but don't put it on me. One of you said people like me are more dangerous, that not the exact words, but are doing more harm to the country than Donald Trump. If you want to believe that bullshit, be my guest. Believe it, but this is the no BS zone. And I'm telling you that is BS.
Absolutely. It is sort of an interesting phenomenon because how people, it's kind of flattering, I guess, that people think people like you and I have so much power, or we're the ones who are actually responsible just in our criticism of Trump for what's happened. It's all pretty silly, I think.
John, let me say one other thing. Again, I understand why you voted for Hillary, and I didn't. And I understand why you voted for Biden, and I didn't. I understand that. But if there's a primary election and somebody and Donald Trump decides to run, if he does, and somebody like Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or a number of other Republicans decide to say, I don't care if Trump is in it, we're in it also, then you have a choice at that point. You don't have to vote for Donald Trump in the primary. You could still vote for a Republican, a conservative Republican, who you will hope will beat the liberal Democrat in 2024. But if you vote for Donald Trump anyway, which is your right, and I'm not going to condemn you for doing that. People have their reasons for doing things. But let's not pretend that he's the political messiah many of you are looking for and have looked for. He's a very bad person who's done a lot of harm. Now, you may emphasize the good, and that's your right. But when you try to overthrow an election, when you try to subvert the peaceful transfer of power, and you have a choice to vote for Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump, and you choose Donald Trump, you've made a decision. We'll never, ever, ever agree. So you want to write me nasty notes, be my freaking guest. I can take it. You're throwing spitballs at a battleship, and you're entitled to do it. I don't welcome it, but I think I understand it. I welcome dissenting opinion, but the stupid stuff I can do without. But feel free. I'm glad you're with us. And I mean this sincerely. I'm especially glad that people who vehemently disagree with me have an open mind and want to listen to what I say. I thank you for that.
No, that's an important point. And like I said, some of these people with these very stiff criticisms, are members, and they are at least interested in different views other than their own, even if they, vehemently disagree with them. But let's go ahead and get back over to the January 6th coverage that I brought up. So you've actually been going back and forth between the different networks. What are some observations you've seen?
Well, the obvious observation is if you tune into CNN, you're going to watch, well, the live hearings are covered by everybody. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when it's not live.
Right.
If you tune into CNN in the morning, which I did today, I knew that at 7 o'clock Eastern time, I knew the lead story was going to be January 6th. And of course, it was January 6th. I knew when I switched over to Fox that they weren't going to say anything about January 6th. And of course, they didn't. Fox was doing inflation because that hurts Joe Biden. And January 6th and CNN was doing January 6th because that hurts Donald Trump. That, my friends, is the business model. They're both legitimate stories. January 6th is legitimate, and so is inflation legitimate. But it's the emphasis, what they play up and what they play down. CNN plays up January 6th, Fox plays down January 6th, because they know what their audience wants, and they're not going to disappoint their audience. There's too much money involved to disappoint their audience.
Yeah, I noticed one exception I did notice to that rule. I believe it was after the hearing that featured the Georgia election officials and the Arizona election official. I was sort of taken. I did see on Fox that these Jonathan Turley and Andrew McCarthy, they're legal experts for Fox. I think they both have credibility, and although I think they'll try to find any sort of legal defense whatsoever for the right side of the political aisle. But they were actually, I think, taken back by that testimony, and kind of adding some credibility to what we've been talking about. This what has come out, despite this being a partisan, lopsided partisan effort with the hearings and with the committee. There's some significant things that keep coming back, not just the really extreme efforts that Trump took to try and overturn the election, but also some of the lives that have been affected about it. I think over it, the people that stood up to him and sort of the anguish they were put through, all the threats and everything. I think that's such an important part of the story too, that a lot of people sort of brush aside and have kind of forgotten about.
Yeah, I'm not downplaying the fact that Fox covers the hearings during the day live, along with CNN and MSNBC. And I'm not downplaying the fact that they have analysts that come on immediately during a break or right after the hearings. they do that. Good for them. That's the least they can do. I'm talking about at 7 o'clock in the morning when you turn on and you're expecting to get a morning newscast, and on CNN, you're getting January 6th for the 15 minutes straight. And on Fox, it's as if January 6th never happened. That's what I'm talking about. I've said this before, so forgive me for saying it again. Cable news is not a model of journalism. It's a model of business. They know what their audience wants. People aren't tuning into Fox to hear what a bad guy Donald Trump is. And people aren't tuning in to CNN to hear what a doofus Joe Biden is. They're getting what they want. That's how you make money on cable. It's not news. I started out working for Walter Cronkite. You know, I sound incredibly behind the curve and old fashioned, but I'd rather have that than what's going on today. We decided what was news. If that sounded arrogant, too bad. We were the professionals and we decided. Now it's people at home who have expertise in other areas. They're carpenters, they fix refrigerators, they're accountants. They're the ones now who are deciding what's going to be the lead story on the news. That's a new thing and I don't like it. I want journalists to decide. But when journalists are as biased as the people on Fox in the morning are and on CNN in the morning are, there's no hope. I've given up. I tune in the morning to make sure the United States isn't under attack. And after a few minutes, I turn on Seinfeld or something.
I thought you were going to say a soap opera after that.
It's too early in the morning.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up at that. I want to thank as usual everybody watching this and everybody who's a premium member for tuning in. Like I had mentioned at the top, this topic was someone who was one that was given to us by a premium member, and so we're always looking for more topic ideas. So please leave those in the comment section. Is there anything else you want to say today, Bernie?
No, only if I was, I know this is a long shot, but if I was unduly harsh on my critics, I am glad that even if you disagree with me, you're open-minded enough to want to know what somebody like me has to say. That I do appreciate, but please don't tell me, please, because it's laughable, that I'm a greater threat to the United States than it's Donald Trump. Please, please. Even my harshest critics must be chuckling at that one.
Oh no, I some of the stuff I read, it's just kind of amazing to me. But great, thanks again, everybody, and Bernie, you have a great day. Okay.
You too, John.
Thank you.